but I always recommend my swimmers spend some time in the open water. You need to do a fair amount of aerobic training, as well as high intensity training to actually progress. Aerobic foundation is good. Doing aerobic foundation in a pool is pretty mundane. You know, it's the black line, the wall, and doing low heart rate repeats. It takes time and it gets pretty boring in the pool. So doing it in open water creates some diversity. It allows us to stretch out a little bit, build up rhythm without the constant tumble turns. Big benefit is getting back to nature. It's something that runners do, and even cyclists often. With runners, doing the work on the track, on the road, etc. is fine, but they always recommend we get out into the trails, back to nature, and just it makes it it's kind of combining fitness with play and mental relaxation. Getting out there once in a while is always going to give you some benefits in terms of the diversity it gives you. Probably a little bit more risk in the pool. It's not always the same. It's probably a good idea to work with groups and get local knowledge when you're going into the open water. A couple of things to consider is, one, there's no black line and no wall, so your orientation skills and your navigation needs to be on point. It is open to the elements, so you're going to get wind, you're going to get currents and things like that, and you need to be aware. We need to be aware what's in that water, any creatures, seaweed, other craft, watercraft, etc. And we need to have adaptive skills. The big thing about open water is always changing. No two swims the same, and that's good because anything that challenges us makes us stronger. And no black line and no wall. It's funny when the first time I get swimmers in the open water who have been spending a lot of time in the pool is orientation. They really battle to navigate, but it is an important skill. We need to be able to swim straight. We need to be able to sight, and it takes practice. It's unfamiliar to pool swimmers, and I do spend a bit of time with my athletes just building up those skills. There's also collision risk. There's no controls. There's no lane ropes. Mostly in the open water, and there's always the chance, particularly when you're swimming with a group of people swimming into each other, and even people coming across people swimming the other way and having a head-on. So we need to be aware of what's going on around us. Hypoxia, because there's no wall. What I find is novice swimmers, when they swim in the pool, may be actually going to oxygen deficit when they're swimming up the lane, and getting a couple of breaths at the wall when they turn and then swimming back, so that the recovery is at the wall. Now, obviously in open water there is no wall, so we need to get used to that, just swimming within ourselves, keeping current with our breathing, so we're not going into deficit, and it takes some getting used to. I always recommend in the pool that once people are competent, they do tumble turns, so they get out of that oxygen deficit syndrome or pattern. But open water, we have to fix that pretty much immediately. I always recommend people new to open water, you link up with a group that's been doing it for a while, that know the ropes and can provide you some guidance. Whether it's be a coach session or whether it's just a group of mates who are familiar with it and can just take you through those steps. They are skills that need to develop. Always the chance of wind, which creates chop. There's the chance of swell, particularly in the ocean, and rips and currents. And it's not just scare anybody, but you just need to be aware what's going on in the water and what the inherent dangers there may be. Working with locals or lifesaver staff, etc. Get to know what's going on, where it's safe to swim, and what's likely to happen in particular tides. Swell and chop. So when the wind gets up, you can get a lot of chop and white caps on the water, even in the bigger lakes. And swimming in amongst chop is different to swimming in a pool. You can only potentially breathe to one side. you have to change your stroke to actually get through the trope. You might have to breathe a little bit higher. So you have to adapt to the conditions. Again, it's creating that diversity in your swimming and creating some strength and some resilience in your swimming. So when things aren't going your way, you can actually tend to push through. The good old pool is generally about 26 to 28 degrees. In open water, in the winter it gets a lot colder than that and can get a lot warmer during the summer. So you need to be sensitive and aware of the cold. Certainly when we get good open water swimmers can swim in pretty cold water without wetsuits as the channel swimmers. But maybe it's a good idea to get a wetsuit if you're new to open water and not. There's a lot of fear around some of the inhabitants of the ocean, and to be honest, the amount of people that are swimming nowadays and surfing in the water I believe we can rationalise it. It's probably more dangerous to be on the roads nowadays than be in the ocean. Some things to consider: jellyfish. Jellyfish are seasonal. Most waterways there are fish. Certainly in the ocean we see a lot of rays, a lot of reef fish, and that's one of the bonuses of swimming in open water. It's just getting back to nature. Swimming with fish is just, I don't know, it's really it's so relaxing. And it's on the other side is sea lice and irritants. Whether it be in the seaweed or they get into your suits, or it's quite stinging. It's more irritation than anything else. But again, just being aware they're there. The locals will let you know when they're more prevalent, etc. And there's what I call the aggressives. That's the one that puts a lot of people off open water swimming. But to me, it's rare. You can rationalise this down. And if we do these epic swims across bays or long waterways, etc., we can use shark protection, shark barriers, and things like that. Just good to be aware. Again, if you're travelling, speak to the locals, find out what's going on in that area. Maybe get support with watercraft if there is a chance of aggressive being around. The other inhabitants around the water is the watercraft. And this is definitely something to be aware of. This is probably my biggest fear in the open water is jet skis. They're the motorcyclists, the off-road motorcyclists of the ocean. And so be aware of fishing craft, surfers, jet skis. Probably scout out the area you're going to swim in. There's normally areas that are frequented by jet skis. Might be segregated areas for swimmers. Stick to those. If there's no segregated areas, just know the frequency, and maybe wear a swim buoy. Pull a swim buoy that's brightly coloured, so you're highly visible to watercraft. A couple of training skills in preparation or when you start open water swimming to be aware of, and these are orientation and navigation is really important. So the first thing is if the more often you swim in open water, the more familiar you become, and the easier you build up those navigation skills. And my suggestion when you do swim in open water, even if it's at the local beach, make sure you're actually sighting and actually swimming from point to point and not just swimming in a general direction, because you will build up navigational skills by actually swimming point to point and having a target. Bilateral and snorkel swimming is a good thing to do. Bilateral swimming really creates balance in your stroke so you can swim straight. Quite often, if you always breathe into one side, we actually develop a skew, and that one side is stronger than the other in terms of pattern. And when we actually get into the open water, we actually swim in a curve and always veering off to one side. So learning to swim bilaterally to create balance in your stroke, maybe doing a fair amount of snorkel swimming, where you're not moving your head or neck around, and creating that balance is a good idea. Unilateral breathing is really important. As the weak side, you're going to run into problems. So we really, for open water swimmers, we really work on that ability to breathe on both sides and be able to breathe on unilaterally on each side. Is a really powerful skill to have.